Any kind of mechanical system is just an incredibly complex puzzle. You're juggling cost, materials, manufacturing techniques, but the real magic, the absolute biggest engineering challenge, it's making sure all of those inherently imperfect manufactured parts actually fit together and function perfectly out in the real world. That hidden, invisible world of precision is exactly what we're unpacking today.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Here's our roadmap for decoding all of this. First, we'll look at the problem with perfection. Second, the language of GD&T. Third, forms and datums. Fourth, orientation and location. And finally, modifiers and bonus tolerances.
So, Section 1, the problem with perfection.
In the high-stakes reality of mechanical design, we really have to establish one fundamental truth right out of the gate. Absolutely nothing manufactured is ever truly perfect. Every single part has slight deviations. So, how do we deal with that? Traditionally, engineers have relied on dimensional tolerancing. You know the drill. It just defines how much a basic dimension can deviate with a simple plus or minus value. But honestly, this method often completely fails because it ignores how the part actually functions. Like, a basic plus or minus dimension can't tell the manufacturer that a surface needs to be completely flat to create a tight seal. And that right there is why geometric dimensioning and tolerancing, or GD&T, is an absolute game changer. It steps in to complement the traditional methods by applying tolerances to specific features, allowing geometric controls that actually reflect the intended real-world function of the part.
Moving on to Section 2, the language of GD&T.
If traditional dimensions are kind of the basic vocabulary of design, you can think of GD&T as the complementary grammar. It communicates exactly which aspects of a design are actually critical. But to speak this language, we first need to understand the difference between a simple, single flat surface and what's called a feature of size. Basically, a feature of size is any feature that has a defined dimension and can physically be measured with a pair of calipers. Think of a hole, or maybe a solid block defined by two opposed parallel surfaces. This distinction is absolutely vital. Why? Because in the GD&T world, geometric tolerances mean entirely different things depending on whether they're applied to just a single flat surface or a measurable feature of size.
Now, what's really interesting here is how elegantly this whole system is organized. GD&T actually lets you control 14 different geometric characteristics. That sounds like a lot, right? But to keep things from getting overwhelming, they're neatly grouped into 5 distinct categories: form, orientation, location, profile, and runout. It's essentially the complete dictionary of our invisible language.
So, how do we actually write a sentence in this language? Well, we use feature control frames. These are those little rectangular grids you see on engineering drawings, and we just read them from left to right. Step 1 is the characteristic symbol. This identifies exactly which of those 14 types we're trying to control. Step 2 defines the tolerance zone. This specifies the acceptable deviation. For instance, if you spot a little diameter symbol there, it means the zone is perfectly cylindrical. And finally, Step 3 lists the datums and modifiers. This is where we set our reference surfaces and unlock some specific bonus rules, which we'll get to in a bit.
All right, Section 3, forms and datums. Let's move into the form category. We'll start by looking at how we measure single surfaces independently. Form tolerances are really unique because they control the shape of a single surface entirely on its own, without caring about the rest of the part. Take flatness, for example. To actually physically inspect this in the shop, you might mount a part on 3 jacks and sweep a dial test indicator all the way across the surface, just hunting for high and low points. Straightness is similar, but applied to individual lines, or maybe the axis of a pin. Then you have circularity and cylindricity, which ensure your cross-sections or full lengths are perfectly round. Now today, a lot of manufacturers will just use advanced coordinate measuring machines, CMMs, where a computerized probe instantly verifies if these exact form tolerances are met. So the crucial point here is that for almost all the other tolerances outside of that form category, we actually have to hold the part against something to measure it. And that brings us to datums. A datum is a theoretically perfect reference surface used to immobilize a part during inspection. But wait, remember our very first rule, nothing is perfect. So out there in reality, we use physical imperfect datum simulators. This might be a highly machined table or a precision granite block.
We use these to hold the part, doing our absolute best to approximate that perfect theoretical datum.
Here's the thing. Before we hold that part against a simulator, it's just floating out there in space. And a part floating in space has exactly 6 degrees of freedom. Think about it. It can translate along 3 axes, left and right, up and down, forward and back. And it can rotate around those same 3 axes. If we want to inspect this thing accurately, our goal is to eliminate all 6 of these freedoms.
Let's walk through exactly how this builds into a repeatable setup. Step 1. We hold the part against the primary datum simulator. This establishes at least 3 points of contact and immediately immobilizes 3 degrees of freedom, locking down some translation and rotation. Step 2. Pushing it up against the secondary datum simulator makes 2 more points of contact, restricting 2 additional degrees of freedom. Step 3. Pushing it into the tertiary datum makes 1 final point of contact, locking that last remaining degree of freedom. Boom! The part is now fully immobilized, and listen, the sequence of these datums in the control frame, it is strictly required. If you change the order the part touches the simulators, it'll sit slightly differently, which entirely ruins the repeatability of your measurement.
Moving right along to Section 4, Orientation and Location. Now that our part is securely locked into its datums, we can actually measure how its features relate to those newly established coordinate systems. First up, orientation tolerances. These basically control angles. Parallelism and perpendicularity dictate how parallel or how perfectly 90 degrees a feature is relative to a datum. You can often check these by placing the datum feature directly flat on a simulator block. But for more weird, general angles, we use angularity. That one can be checked using a specialized tool called a sine bar to really accurately measure the specific angle between the feature and the datum.
Next, we have location tolerances, particularly position. Position is arguably one of the most commonly used GD&T tools out there, especially for locating holes. But it brings up a massive aha moment. So what does this all mean? Why is the geometric tolerance approach so much better than traditional plus and minus dimensions? I mean, why can't we just measure x and y distances with a ruler and call it a day?
Well, this brilliantly illustrates why. Traditional basic dimensions create rectangular tolerance zones. It's like a tiny invisible square around the target. The huge danger here is that perfectly good, highly functional parts can be rejected simply because the whole center happens to fall into the extreme corners of that square limit. But by switching to GD&T position tolerances, we create a cylindrical tolerance zone. This zone is evenly distributed around the true exact position of the hole. This simple geometric shift actually gives the manufacturer significantly more usable, perfectly functional area. It literally stops perfectly good parts from being thrown in the scrap bin.
And that brings us to our final section, Section 5, Modifiers and Bonus Tolerances.
We are now entering the final, most advanced stage of the language, where we unlock some serious additional leeway, depending on the physical size of the manufactured part itself. But first, we have to define a term, maximum material condition, or MMC. This is the condition where a feature of size contains the absolute most amount of material legally allowed by its dimensional limits. So, for a hole, MMC is the smallest allowable hole, because that leaves the most metal behind. For a pin, it's the largest allowable pin. It basically just means the feature is at its thickest or tightest limit.
So why is understanding MMC so incredibly powerful? Well, by default, tolerance zones do not change size. But if you apply an MMC modifier, which is represented by a little m inside a circle in the control frame, it adds what we call a bonus tolerance to a feature's location based on its actual size. Think about it like this. If a hole is drilled slightly oversized, it has less material than its MMC limit, right? Because the hole is bigger, its central position can actually be slightly less accurate, and the mating pin will still slip in and fit perfectly. This bonus space is a total game changer. It is the ultimate problem solver that saves manufacturers massive amounts of money by keeping functional, slightly imperfect parts out of the trash.
But beware, because the rules literally change depending on where you are in the world. The American ASME standard follows the envelope principle. That means it assumes size strictly controls form. So a pin, manufactured at its absolute maximum size,
must be perfectly straight to fit into its theoretical envelope. However, the international ISO standard uses the independency principle. Under ISO, geometric form and size are completely separate. That means a pin could actually be slightly bent, but technically perfectly acceptable, as long as it meets its independent size limits. It is a completely different philosophy on how parts fit together.
Beyond everything we've covered, this language has some incredibly versatile catch-all tools. Profile tolerances are wild. They can magically control form, orientation, and location all at the exact same time, effectively tracing the complete, complex shape of a part. And then you have run-out tolerances, which are absolutely critical for rotating parts. They measure eccentricity to ensure that spinning shafts don't cause unwanted, catastrophic vibrations.
We've covered a tremendous amount of ground today, decoding the grids, the symbols, and the principles that ensure our messy, imperfect reality can still produce flawless, reliable function. Knowing the invisible language of GD&T, how will you look differently at the complex physical machines seamlessly operating around you today? Next time you see a jet engine, an assembly line, or honestly, even a simple household appliance, remember those invisible cylindrical zones and datum simulators working relentlessly behind the scenes to make it all possible. Thanks for joining us on this explainer, and as always, keep staying